various conversations we're having with the various newsrooms. Men-to-men engagement, male ambassadors within the media houses. We already have a documentary that we're using to spearhead this conversation. And all the time when people say it's a faceless conversation, we are happy to throw the link around for people to see that this conversation actually has faces, and notable faces for that matter. Publication of a digital handbook on safety and security of female journalists. We also have that because we're talking about sexual harassment that is taking different faces, that changes waves. And now because we're using the digital platforms a lot, of course, sexual harassment has also been digitized. We have also men cafes on addressing sexual harassment within the media. So we are constantly engaging men in separate forums as well to see that they can continue to become champions. Sensitization meetings, 9 media houses have adopted the policy, and we hope that we will continue to have many more on board for those that do not have sexual harassment policy at all. And for the media houses that already have sexual harassment policy, we are keen to see to what level, to what extent are these sexual harassment policies effective. Policy formulations, training of journalists, sensitization meetings, adoption of model sexual harassment policy are some of the activities that we have continued to engage as AMWIC. So these are just some of the engagements we have done so far. We launched the Sexual Harassment Committee and endorsement of a draft model policy on sexual harassment. We have done a review in partnership with Article 19, who was some of our partners. We've also done a sensitization forum with Capital FM in collaboration with Journalists for Human Rights. We also have done another adoption, of course, conversations, and then adoption of the sexual harassment policy at Pamoja FM, which is Nairobi-based community radio station. And also we have had signing of the commitment of the anti-sexual harassment policy with a number of industry players in Kenya. We've also continued to engage with other partners to come on board, including the Transparency International, who are keen to look at sexual harassment as a form of corruption. I like that. Yesterday, we had this engagement that we're doing with the Kenya media stakeholders, and of course, the executive director of Transparency International, Sheila Masinde, was in the room and said, yes, we're very keen to look at sexual harassment as a form of corruption. This is the digital handbook that we have used in our training on digital safety and security to tackle online harassment that was launched in December in the year 2021. It's available on our website. All the documentations and information that I have spoken about is available on our website. Our website is www.amwic.org, and AMWIC is Association of Media Women in Kenya in short. This is the video that I made reference to. It's available on YouTube as well, documentary on sexual harassment in Kenyan media. So if you find people, because that's how people want to trash this conversation all the time, by saying it's a faceless conversation. This documentary has faces of people and has faces of Kenyan women within the newsrooms. Challenges that we have faced so far, where Matthew asked, what can we do? How much more can we do? Well, we have funding. We want to do much more, but of course, everything that we want to do has faces the biggest challenge, which is funding challenge, as funding as a constraint. And we are hoping that we will continue to engage different partners who are interested in this conversation, people who really want to bring civility in our workplace, to see that we can continue doing more training, doing more engagements, and just bringing everybody on board. Adoption of the model policy, again, a lack of goodwill from the industry players. Some of the time, this is a conversation that people don't want to have. We can have them on the corridors, but no, we're not open yet to bring everybody on board. So these are some of the key bottlenecks we will say that we have faced as an organization, but well, we are here and we want to keep pushing. And this engagement today is a really timely engagement and very relevant engagement to listen in to what other people are doing in other countries, to listen in to some of the things. And I'm hoping that at the end of this engagement, we will come up with solutions on how we can further this conversation. So part of the partners that we have had in this conversation so far include the Women in News, WONEFRA, and then we have JHR, the Media Council of Kenya. We have FIDA, which is Federation of Women Lawyers in Kenya. We have Free Press Unlimited. We have FEMNET, Transparency International, KUJ, which is the Union of Journalists, and Crown Trusts, again, in Kenya. They continue to support our work, and we're still hoping that we will continue to do much more. So, well, that's all I wanted to to present in order to answer all your questions. Marcy, in case you have many questions, I am here, I am listening in, and I'm happy to respond whenever needed to. Asante.
Thank you, Patience. You've scored an A. You've done quite well.
Thank you.
Because you've given us a very good context on the Kenyan scenario and, of course, what has been happening and is currently happening. But I'd like to pick a few things from what you've already presented. And it's interesting that you've said that you've already established some relationships with media owners, but one of the bottlenecks that you have been facing is lack of goodwill from industry players. And I want to imagine that when you're talking about industry players, media owners are part of the industry players, the editors are part of the industry players. So it leaves me wondering, could they be, quote unquote, part of the problem in addressing sexual harassment? Because I do not want to point a finger at anyone and say that they could probably be covering or protecting the perpetrators, but could they be a problem? Secondly, I think you respond to that. I like what you have said that sexual harassment is really not a women's affair. Men are also a lot of sexual harassment, but because of this, the culture of silence that a man should not cry, a man should not be seen, expressing his emotions openly in the public. So they tend to bottle up. But I like the fact that these conversations have been happening so that we normalize the conversation on sexual harassment to encourage more men to speak out and also to encourage women to speak out. The approach that the Association of Media Women has taken on the men-to-men engagement is a good approach. Then again, you get the men to be also champions, in fighting sexual harassment, and also the vice versa, women, having, coming together to support each other. So, Patience, I don't know whether you'd like to respond to my concerns on the lack of goodwill from industry players.
Well, thank you so much, Marcy, for your concerns. And I was just trying to go through the view grid to see who is on board. I'm happy to give this opportunity. Let me introduce my colleagues actually who are here, because I've seen Sharon Kechula is here. Sharon, do you want to say hi? Maybe if you want, or I'm happy to just introduce you. Sharon Kechula is a programs manager, so that I'm just introducing them. So just in case I hand over any of the questions or to somebody else, then it's really within the Association of Media Women in Kenya. We also have our board member, Jen Godia, who is here with us and also has been very vocal around this conversation. She's done a lot of work around this, and including with Women in News. And we also have a number of our members that are already joining here, and they have been in these conversations. We've done a lot of work together. I see the likes of Rachel Lakitari, who yesterday used a very good phrase, and I noted it down, and I said, I think the next report you should be launching, that's what we should be using as the title, said, let's lift the veil of silence. And while it answers to your question, we said for a while, there has been a lot of stigmatization, and everybody else feels safe when they don't have to speak about this. So to respond to some of your questions, please allow me to hand this over to Jen Godia, who is here, so that she can answer she's our board member at AMIC. Jen Godia, I see you there. If you can unmute yourself, I'll be happy for you to chime into this conversation and also give us your perspectives and insights in this conversation. And maybe one way of doing that is to really answer to the question that Marcy Njoroge has asked.
Patience, I think I need to indulge you.
Okay.
We have a plenary session.
Okay.
So it would have been best for every panelist to first make their presentation. Then we could open the plenary. Because now again, if you start getting into the plenary, will take a lot of time. Maybe what we can do, we'll put the questions into the packing, and then we will respond to them plus the concerns.
Okay.
I just wanted to engage you, but not the participants at this moment.
Okay, then that's fine. Well, so maybe just to briefly answer to your question, the first one on whether we have are the men perpetrators. Well, it's really in the nature and the structure of how journalism has been in Kenya, not maybe just in Kenya, but of course, maybe regionally. for a long time, the industry managers or those who sit at the helm of this industry have always been men. So most of the time, people are very the men are very defensive concerning these conversations. And why is simply because they have been on the receiving end. Most of the time, they're the ones who are making decisions as to what really gets accepted, or how do we define who comes on board at what level, what have we, and really the fear of people feeling like, our names are going to be mentioned here. That has always been one of the challenges. So while we might not pinpoint and to say it's at this media house, the person who's stopping this conversation is XYZ because he is a perpetrator, we can't conclusively say that. But of course, you see, even in the various groups that we are in, this is a conversation that is being driven against most of the time by the man in those groups. But of course, we can say it's really in some of the conversations that we already have. And for the women who've come out to explain their cases, there are a number of women that Amica has supported and offer psychosocial support. Most of them have named names, but of course, fear of victimization has always been one of the challenges. That, as I want to report about this guy or this person who's been sexually harassing me, he is my boss. He's the, managing editor. He's my senior. He's the sub editor. And most of the time, really, then people don't feel confident enough to report about this. And I want to believe that's really the reason as to why we feel like there has not been, there's not been the level of goodwill we expect. But we are hoping that we will continue talking about these conversations. And the moment we turn the tide to say it's not only a women's conversation, but it's a conversation that is affecting our colleagues within the media industry, we hope that that conversation will take a different direction altogether.
Certainly, Patience. So as you continue, maybe you could share the link of the video you are talking about on the chat, because it's a 30-minute video, so we can't get time to play it here. Now, I'd like us to proceed, and I want to invite Amina Mohammed from Cameras for Girls. She's the founder of Cameras for Girls, and I'll give a brief intro on who Amina is. So Amina has always had a passion for photography. She spent years exploring this passion while working in film and television as a producer and production manager on numerous documentaries. In 2018, Amina designed an initiative called Cameras for Girls to teach photography and business skills to women and girls in her home country of Uganda. She provides a camera to keep, plus a 4-phase skills-based curriculum for girls and women who want to become journalists and photographers in male-dominated Africa, but face gender-based barriers to employment. She has taught 47 young women via an in-person workshop in Uganda and 10 women online in South Africa, and 65% now have full-time jobs in journalism, photography, and communications-related jobs. But more importantly, they are confident young women ready to take on challenges that define gender inequality in this sector. Amina has been featured in the press across Canada and the US and continues to advocate for gender equality and for women's voices to be heard across Africa. So Amina, this afternoon, we would like you to discuss on the prevalence of sexual harassment and actions taken to tackle sexual harassment in the Uganda media sector. Given the fact that you have been working with young women, and so far from your profile here, it shows that there are quite a number of women who are now working in this sector, and they are ready to tackle the challenges that come from this industry, some of which we are discussing this afternoon, and that is sexual harassment. So Amina, the floor is yours.
Thank you again, Mercy. I still cannot turn on my camera or share my screen, but I will just speak for a few minutes about this. So when we started this initiative, our goals were really to advocate for gender equality, women's empowerment. And we started in Uganda because we have a history of coming from Uganda. I live full-time in Canada. I'm a Canadian. As the charity is also Canadian. However, my family's roots are Ugandan. We came from Uganda in 1972 as refugees after the exile of the Indians under Idi Amin's rule. And it wasn't until I went back in 2007 for my first trip that I really realized the the distinction or the difference between the rights of women and girls in the developing world versus the developed world, Canada, US, and what have you. And it really, it changed me as a person. It changed me as to what my values and my goals are and how I wanted to be in the world. I just didn't know how to make that change. And then 10 years later, in 2017, I came up with the idea for Cameras for Girls, and the rest is history, because we've been there since 2018. And proudly, we will be expanding to Tanzania in November for our first training. But what came out of this was the trust that started to be built between me and my students. I am an outsider. Even though my family's roots are Ugandan, I cannot say that I'm African and know all the values. But what I can do is speak to them, women to women, and really understand or, address their concerns as a woman. And the discussion started to evolve more from I can't find work to I found work, but my boss is telling me I need to have sex with him. Or a girl was raped and disappeared because of shame. And when she finally told me 5 months later, we paid for therapy. But our role, we are not therapists. We are teachers of, photography, storytelling, business skills. So aside from supporting the girls one-to-one or giving them the tools or advocating for them or empowering them to say no, we're also reaching out to other collaborative partners across Africa who have experience in the therapeutic space, who have experience in dealing with sexual harassment or worse, rape, and really giving our students access to other tools. Because as we know, women are not given a voice, right? Even in Canada, you'll be surprised that the breaking the glass ceiling still exists, and it still comes with many women also claiming about sexual harassment, regardless of the industry that they work in. So being able to build that confidence in them, take that shame away from their experience, really show them that other women are also in the same position, but that through sharing, through empowerment, through using their voices, small changes can happen. And so aside from the 4-phase training that we already provide to our students, we just recently started phase 5. This is unofficial, but basically what it is we've brought together all 4 cohorts of students in Uganda, that's 64 to date, and given them access to a private WhatsApp group led by 1 former student and 1 current student. And these girls lead discussions on these difficult topics. But because it's WhatsApp, they feel safe to share. When they share, the other girls can be empowered to share and also, share about how they've overcome this, or maybe they're struggling through something else. Once a month, we then pay for them to get together, network, be safe, be fun, be women, be girls, and enjoy each other's company, but also talk in person about things that are impacting them. The other thing that we've done is we've started to approach Women's Media Association. So we've had a great discussion with TAMWA, that's Tanzania Media Women's Association, Rose, who you heard, in coming up with some collaborations, because we are going to be working in the country of how we can tackle this head on for the students who will come through Cameras for Girls. We've also had discussions with Uganda Media Women's Association, and they are doing the same by offering courses to women on various topics, including sexual harassment and how they can deal with this effectively. And then we're also starting to talk to media houses. I had the pleasure of meeting Carol Bayanga, who's on this call, on my last visit to Uganda in June, about how we can safely have our girls enter and get fair paid work, but also avoid sexual harassment. And so we're in talks about their internship programs and how we can, how we can work together. And so our goal at Cameras for Girls is not only to be a conduit for these girls to learn the skills that they need to have and receive a camera to keep and, get up their skills and get jobs, but to keep them safe and to be able to be that safe space that they can turn to in times of joy or times of struggle. So if you want to reach out to me, I will put my details in the chat. I would love to have conversations and get, I hope that we can all come together at the end of the day and really build a awareness around this that's not just within Africa, but global, and show that together we're trying to address this situation head on.
Wow, thank you so much, Amina, for your presentation. And I think one key thing I have picked from what you have spoken to in regards to this topic is the ability for us to create safe spaces for women, whereby women can come together and speak about the issues that they face while they are doing their work and not feel intimidated, not feel like they are facing secondary victimization, but feel safe enough to speak up so that they can address what it is that is hindering their productivity. And again, I also like the approach of cameras for girls, because just identifying that it is important to work with other organizations, that is the media organizations and associations in Uganda, is really critical, because then again, you're able to create synergies whereby wherever there are issues of sexual harassment or any other issue that is hindering the productivity of women, then organizations can come together and put their heads together to address those issues. I think I commend you for that approach, and we are learning some of the best practices to be replicated even in other countries. I'd like to invite Juanita, now that you're in Uganda, Juanita Nankia. I don't know whether she's in this call. She is the programs officer at the Uganda Media Women's Association. Juanita, if you're here, you can make some remarks. I was going through the participants list and I don't know, I might have missed her, but if she's here, kindly unmute. Okay. So I don't seem to find her. So I was hoping we could keep it in Uganda and hear a little bit from Umwa, but since she's join us at any moment, we're going to give her an opportunity. But now I'd like us to move to South Sudan, because we have a participant from South Sudan, who's also a panelist. And this afternoon, we're also joined by Ibasi Patricia Tobbs. She's the Secretary General at the Female Journalists Networks in South Sudan. So Patricia is a development professional with a vast experience in media. She has demonstrated in-depth understanding in producing content for radio, with 4 years experience as a news reporter, an editor and producer. Currently, she works at the radio network as the network's news editor. Patricia also serves as the Secretary General of the South Sudan Female Journalists Network. So Patricia, welcome. I would like to hear from you on just the same, more or less what Patience has spoken about, but I'd like to hear you making a presentation on the prevalence of gender-based violence and the actions taken to tackle sexual harassment in the South Sudan media sector. In the same way, just please enlighten us on what you have been working on and what you think in your context has worked and what has not worked. And in the same breath, what also needs to be done to address sexual harassment. Patricia, karibu sana.
Well, thank you very much, Njoroge. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
I can hear you clearly.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for that introduction. Well, I'm Ibasi Patricia Tops once again. I work for the radio community as the network news editor and recently appointed as the Secretary General for FGN, Female Journalist Network in South Sudan. FGN is a member-based network of female journalists operating in South Sudan. They include female journalists working in print, electronic media, both online, web-based media, broadcast media, both TV and radio, media advocacy organization, and for freelancers. Well, I would like first to talk on the status of sexual harassment in the media sector in South Sudan. Well, when we talk of sexual harassment, we know these are things that are happening in our working places. Like for the case in South Sudan, sexual harassment exists, and I don't know, I should say maybe it's the worst in South Sudan here. And for this case, female journalists still find it very difficult in finding the right way or the right channel to express themselves. There are several unconfirmed numbers of them who are being exploited sexually, but still find it difficult. You know, they find it, they're fearing to report and maybe choose the right channel to report. They prefer to remain silent. Maybe they're fearing, maybe they're protecting their jobs. Maybe they feel if I talk, if I report a certain person as maybe the harassing the person sexually, someone maybe may be fearing I'm going to lose my job. And most of times this is what they depend in. And also for the case in South Sudan, you know, there are various media institutions in South Sudan here, but they seem are not transparent. And, you know, some are not qualified to resolve cases of sexual harassment. Despite even some female journalists reporting them, there is still difficulty, you know, the cases cannot be resolved. I don't know what's really happening. And, you know, even at workplaces, we know these issues are happening, these things of sexual harassment. It's growing day and day. And to others, it seems very normal, like for the culture in South Sudan here. Other people will feel this is normal. But one thing that people need to know is, like, you know, it's not about the sex, you know, but the harassment the person faces, which needs to be reported. But still the channel, the female journalist or any other person working in the media sector is still finding it hard to report. And for the case of South Sudan, we also need to know that the stage, you know, we are in the state of maybe where the policies are just still in process, you know, they are not yet being implemented. And when you look at the case of prevalence of GBV in South Sudan here, about 34% of women experience GBV, either in a form of physical or sexual violence in their life, but still find it very hard to report, you know. And for me, I've always put this in a case of culture, you know. Some people feel very comfortable, especially the women, they feel very comfortable. Even when you interact with them in the community, you go in the community as a journalist, when you go to maybe to report these cases of theirs, you know, a woman is being assaulted, a woman is being harassed. But if a person goes out on the ground maybe to speak out to this woman, you know, speak out to this man, they feel like they are very comfortable. Some of them are very comfortable with it. They feel like it's the right, a man has the right to beat a woman, you know. You know, you have the right, someone can be harassed sexually. You don't want to come out to speak it out because they feel it's the culture, you know. And for our case of South Sudan also, when you look at, you know, these things of empowerment, you know, they don't believe women are capable of doing a certain thing. They believe everything is for men. That's why it is very difficult. And also absence of accountability and sexual violence is a very big challenge in the country, you know, because women still fear to come out to speak out. But then how do we address this, you know? So I think the way forward, like what FGN is doing currently, is there was 3 months ago, there was a media gender policy which was established and was already presented, but still, it's still in the process of being implemented and actions being taken up. And this media gender policy works towards a gender equality in the media, because we want a safety environment for the female journalists and also to the women. We need to see women also appearing in the media, not only maybe the female journal, but also want to see the stories of women being covered, you know, in the media. And then what FGN has also done is ensuring, you know, we have done a lot of mentorship programs, both for the female journalists in South Sudan here. This is to mentor them, you know, so that they can be able to speak out, you know, the issues arising at working places, you know, they're able to speak out, maybe reach out to a person, reach out to a worker, your own co-worker, maybe explain if somebody is harassing you outside there, you have to, you know, you don't need to just sit there, you know, reach out to your worker, you know, to your co-worker, report it, you know, it will help us maybe address these issues of sexual harassment. Also, what FGN has been doing is also documenting women's stories on GBV. You know, we have contacted some female journalists, like in the 10 states in South Sudan here, Western Equatoria, Eastern Equatoria. We have had, you know, we want to write stories of women to bring out so that they can speak out. And when they speak out, they're able to also, or other women who are maybe listening to the radios, or those also even reading to the newspapers, they're able to see out that the people are speaking out. You know, this will also help the rest of people who are in hiding, who are unable to come out to speak. If they see that somebody has shared his or her story, you know, in the media, others who are in hiding are able to come out and speak out. And then another thing is also, you know, what has not worked for FGN is, you know, having the right channel of reporting. You know, sometimes, you know, someone is being sexually harassed at the working places, but you don't know, where do you go to? Where do you report it? You know, whom do you share your problem of being harassed? You find that the right channel of reporting, it's still very hard. Another thing is, like we had mentioned earlier, even I heard from other speakers saying that people still shun out from speaking up. You know, people are fearing to speak out on issues arising to them. This is another thing that is not working out, which is making it very hard. That's why sexual harassment still do exist, because people are fearing to speak out, you know. And then also sometimes, like for FGN, you know, the results are not, some results have not been measured. But we believe that maybe we need to conduct a research, you know, a research survey, so that we get to know maybe how many female journalists are being sexually harassed, so that they can speak out through conducting a research survey. And then another thing also that is we're facing, you know, another thing that does not work for FGN is, you know, the issue of funding. You know, an organization cannot move on without funding. But if there is funding, things will move on very well for the female journalists. Yeah. So what needs to be done is maybe finding, getting for the organization a funding that will help, that will improve on safety of female journalists in the country of South Sudan. Not only female journalists in South Sudan, but also other female journalists who are coming in the country, who are like freelancers. So if the funding is there to support these female journalists, of course, everything will move on very well. You know, improving also on the gender equality. When we improve on gender equality, everything will move on very well. When you look at the media sectors in South Sudan here, look at the bosses, you find that these big positions, they are mostly for male, you know. You find the manager is a male, the executive director is a male. So, you know, what if your reporter is there working but is being harassed by a fellow worker there? How will this female journalist face the director or the manager who is a male, you know? So if there is gender equality, also empowering women, giving them all this position. Of course, women are capable of doing it. So we need to empower women so that they can also get this position. And this will help the female journalists in the media sector in South Sudan to be able to report freely without fear. Yeah. Another thing is also safeguarding policies. Like I had mentioned earlier on, most of these media houses in South Sudan do not have safeguarding policies. So they need to develop safeguarding policies that will guarantee safety and protection for female journalists, not only female journalists, but everybody who is practicing, you know, the journalism. Another thing is also, lastly, I will end on establishing a reporting mechanism. where everybody or any female journalist will be able to know, why do I report when I have an issue? You know? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Patricia. You have given us a good context on how the situation is in South Sudan, and as well as you have outlined the efforts that you have been taking as an organization. And it's good that you've also shed light on some of the issues that you're facing, even as you're trying to make the media space favorable and safe for women. It's, however, very interesting that you have posed a very good question, that how do we address this sexual harassment if women are not speaking out? And women are not speaking out because probably they don't even know where to report when they are being sexually harassed. And, they feel like if I speak out, they are ashamed of already what has happened to them. And it's interesting that if that is happening in South Sudan, I think it's the same thing that Rose from Tanzania spoke about. And you can see the similarities of the situation in South Sudan and in Tanzania, sorry. But again, remember what Patient says, that in Kenya, they have been able to put together a documentary and put faces on victims of sexual harassment. Women have been encouraged to speak out, and they have been emboldened to speak out on what they have been facing. I think the most important thing, I think, for us today is to establish and identify that there's some similarities, and there are, best practices from different countries regionally that each and every country can borrow from as we, work together towards addressing this vice. It's interesting that you've also spoken about culture, which to me, I see it's cut across the borders, that every country that has been represented here today has alluded, to a certain degree, the culture of silence, the culture of sex being a very taboo topic that people do not want to speak about, people do not want to be associated with, yet it hinders their productivity at work. I think I'd like to take this opportunity to thank every panelist for your input and your contribution towards this webinar this afternoon. But at this moment, I'd like to open the plenary to the participants. We have about 48 participants. I think, Amina, you're saying that having a safe space to report is essential. I totally agree with you. I think, Bernard, I believe the participants can unmute themselves and contribute to this discussion. Bernard, am I right? Do they have the ability to do that?
Yes, Mercy, they should be.
Okay, fine. I think, Mona, you can go first. I'll just open the plenary so that we can discuss on what are some of the best practices to address sexual harassment in newsrooms in your country. Mona, you can go first.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for being invited to this important conference. I really have to thank Amina and the staff and everybody who organized this event. My name is Mona Mwakalinga. I am the Senior Journalism and Mass Communication at the University of Islam.
Mona, I'm afraid you're not very clear. I'm sure I'm not the only one. Hello, Mona.
Yes, Mercy, maybe she can type. She could type.
Yeah, please, you can type your responses because you're breaking, you're not very clear.
Oh boy, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think it's better.
Okay. I was just saying that, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizer. I can see you shaking your head, so that means I am not being heard. Is that the case?
Mona, I'm sorry. I think we could go next. Kezia, I see your hand is up. Mona, kindly you can type your responses.
Okay.
Kezia, please unmute.
Yes, I hope you can hear me. Yes, so my name is Kezia. from Kenya. I'm a AMWIC member. I'm a member of AMWIC. I think one of the things that I've noticed that has been highlighted a lot is also about interns, you know, in the media space, for example. So before this, students go to school. They go for internship. I think there should be kind of a program where they are empowered about these issues, because also they, you know, when you're looking at victimization and all that, when someone is an intern, and I don't know if some of us have experienced that, when you're an intern. Yes.
Bernard, please mute.
Oh, sorry.
Continue.
Okay, yeah. So when you're an intern, one of the things is you're hoping you'll get a job there, a permanent job at some point. So the person who is supposed to be mentoring you is the same person, maybe for instance, who's harassing you. They kind of hold that key to your future at that point, because you're, you know, being an intern, maybe you're scared, you don't know who to report to, you don't know who to go to. So it all starts with at school level. If you know, students are empowered about this, then they'll be able to also have the confidence. And secondly, having a channel, not just through the media house, but for example, I think in Kenya you'd have the Media Council of Kenya, a hotline number, so that even if within the media house and media space as an intern, you're working there, you don't have the confidence of really approaching someone, because even the person you're approaching may be the person who's harassing you. There's a hotline number that you can call. So I think it works across the board, not just Kenya, that you start with just right from the university, empowering these young ladies to a point, so that it's not a point of where you experienced it in, you know, when you're an intern and at some point now you're changing careers. It's not fair that someone is changing careers or quitting their job just because of an individual. So yes, there needs to be that. They need to be given a voice at a very young age. That's my take.
Thank you, Kezia. I see Zuhura, your hand is up, but before you come in, I'd like to, you know, echo what Kezia is saying, because I realize that when you're new in a job or in a working space, people have experienced sexual harassment, but they really don't know what it is they've experienced. And so you find that when some of these people get into spaces like this where issues on sexual harassment are being, you know, discussed, they say, oh, and by the way, what I experienced when I was starting out, you know, in my new job, that was actually sexual harassment. And it's true, Kezia, because with mentorship, with awareness, then you get into the industry with the knowledge of this. If this happens to me, this is what amounts to sexual harassment, and this is probably how I can get redress if I am faced with sexual harassment. Thank you, Kezia, for your input. Funke Obafemi, please unmute yourself and contribute to this debate.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you, Mercy, for giving me the floor. I want to appreciate all the speakers and the panelists. I just want to add, I'm from Nigeria. I work with an NGO. I'm not in the media space, but I work with women and children. And I got this invite through Amina, Camera for Girls. Okay, so I just want to contribute in this way that one way that we can actually tackle the issue of sexual harassment is involving the duty bearers. So most times, what we found that in my area is girls come to report to you. They tell you this is the issue I'm having, and then you take the report to the duty bearers, and the duty bearers mess up the case for you. So sometimes they don't even know what to do. They don't know how to handle the issue. They don't know how to defend the victim. And so they end up victimizing the victim, making it look as if you shouldn't have even come to report. And that's why you see a lot of ladies not willing to come out, because they look at it, at the end of the day, I get to be blamed. I get to be, to be seen as a bad person. and all of that. So they rather die, they rather keep it to themselves and like, you know what, I'm not going to talk to anyone about it. And before you know it, they become damaged adults. So from that angle, if we have our duty bearers being carried along, being trained, properly trained to handle sexual harassment cases, I think we'll get it right from there. And also, I've found out that hurting people hurt people. So for example, the men who we see as the issue, so to say right now, as the major perpetrators of this, may actually be damaged men. So they may have their own issues too. I'm not trying to support them because that's what we did in my organization. I realized that all the time we talk about girls, and some of the boys will come to you and tell them, "Ma, this is what I'm going through too. I had this issue being a child, I was molested," and before you know it, it changed their mentality, it changed their approach, and before you know it, they're looking for who is next victim they too can hurt. So in my organization, what we now decide to do is what? We're going to raise a campaign for boys. We call it redefining masculinity. We try to change their understanding of what being a man is. We try to let them see how to break out from that traditional masculinity ideology that was given to them. You know, that feeling of you have to be able to bring down a girl before you can show that you are truly a strong man. So we started doing that with them and trying to change their orientation and trying to let them see the importance of, you know, respecting a girl, respecting themselves and all. And we found out that a lot of them began to, you know, come out to us to tell us that I didn't want to do it, but I was also a victim. So I felt like I need to transfer it to another, you know, so we got a lot of improvement on that. So that's number two. Another place I also want to speak about is accountability. The policies, the government. Sometimes, you know, it's easy to make these laws, it's easy to bring up policies, but we don't really get to do them. We don't have anything to show for it most times, and people feel like at the end of the day, nothing is going to happen. So if we can bring in the government, the duty bearers, and even the men themselves trying to change the narrative around what masculinity is for them, I think it would be a long way to help us as women. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Funke, for highlighting on the importance of bringing the duty bearers to the table. Bogere, Charles, let's get to hear from a man. Kindly unmute and speak to us. And for those of you who have spoken and your hands are still up, I'd request you to put them down so that we get track of those who have not spoken. Yes, Bogere, are you with us?
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Mercy, for welcoming me into this forum as well. I call myself Bogere Charles, but I also call myself Charles Kemak in my line of duty. I am from South Sudan. I appreciate this forum and I appreciate my colleague Ibasi for the wonderful presentation. In fact, she has mentioned all the facts of sexual harassments and the causes around here and how women shy away to report on issues that affect them directly. And being a culture that women feel like it's a normal, you know, it's a normal practice for a man to handle a woman the way they like. It's very phenomenal, and it is you know, the situation, the way we handle this situation here is completely different from the way I've had most of the presenters and participants have really presented. But my friend, who happens to be the team leader of JHR in Kenya, Mustafa Dumbuya, can attest to this. When he was in South Sudan as a media trainer, he also observed and witnessed by himself. JHR left a mark with its campaigns, training journalists and empowering the media on how to handle such cases. One of the very important elements that JHR did in South Sudan was to introduce a gender program in which they were assigning gender trainers in each media houses. So I was wondering, for us to deal away with issues, you know, it's not realistic if we say we are going to battle and really win and deal away with sexual harassment once and for all. But what if, it's just a suggestion, if JHR can also put it into one of their plans, what if we introduce our human rights desk in media outlets? For example, in South Sudan, I would think if we could have an independent human rights desk where the focal person, whichever media houses choose, the focal person for sexual harassment cases sits, and we give our female journalists that platform where they can easily report the cases and also be handled without fear or favor of whoever that can be of a responsibility of that kind of cases. And one, secondly, what if JHR also plans or puts into its program a plan maybe to campaign or to advocate for an equal pay for all media practitioners? For example, in my country, media is the less paying venture, of course. For those who would love to, I remember when I was doing my journalism classes here, my trainer was very clear telling me, if you want to be rich, journalism it's not something that you have to think of. So it's something that that we have to look into, so that journalists who would love to enter or to also participate into journalism here, they feel the confidence of them not being threatened by people who are already, founded, people who are already empowered, people who already feel like they hold greater heights over others. Because if we can campaign for equal pay, I am very sure these issues of interns feeling like they need favors of the superiors. These issues of other female journalists feeling like I think I need to do this for my superior for another favor. It's something that can be handled. I think these are few issues that can bring these cases of women being harassed and they shy away to speak out because they feel like, how can I report my boss who's giving me all these favors, who is supporting my child, or who is supporting my welfare, or something like that. So if journalism for human rights could really put it into consideration, and we lobby and we advocate, or maybe we fight for equal pay for journalists all across the region, I think that is also something that could be helpful in curbing such kind of cases as sexual harassment. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Bulgaria, for those insights. I think you've hit the nail on the head that these are some of the conversations that really must happen. They are hard, but they have to happen so that we are all working on the same platform. So I think I saw Zuhura's hand was up first. We'll have Zuhura, Imani, Winnie, Dennis, and then we'll finish with Eva. If there are no more hands, we'll have to close. And then I see Jane's hand is up. So let's start with Zuhura. And kindly, in the interest of time, let us make our comments slightly short. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, I'm Zuhura. I work with the University of Dar es Salaam School of Journalism and Mass Communication as an assistant lecturer. I've been serving as a gender focal point for 10 years now. And so I would like to share what the University of Dar es Salaam is doing so far in regarding these issues of sexual harassment, gender-based violence, etc. So basically, the university is having two policies. One policy is on gender, we call it gender policy, and the other one is anti-sexual harassment policy. All these policies right now are under review, but have been guiding what students, tutors, and other workers at the university are supposed to do, and how they all can have a common safe space what if it happens if a student is undergoing a sexual harassment, which steps to take and punishments that the perpetrator can have. So far, I think it has been a very guiding tool for both students and lecturers at the university. Again, at the School of Journalism and Mass Communication, we are cooking these young journalists who we expect in few years, maybe 3 years or 2 to 3 years, they are going to work in the industry. So we basically orient them during orientation when they first join the university. We tell them how the situation is, and we always orient them when they want to go for the practical training. It's like an internship kind of, telling them the newsroom, how the newsroom is, and how they can protect themselves from sexual harassment. We have been engaging with partners, our very closest partners, including TAMWA, Media Council of Tanzania, Internews, where they provide workshops and trainings to our students in different batches. So I think we are still doing something, but yet we need more because we receive students each year. So we receive new students, or I can say fresh batch each year who needs to learn on this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Zuhura. I think you have, like almost addressed Kezia's sentiments and concerns that this kind of empowerment and this kind of awareness should start even at the university level, so that when these people get to the working space or the working, when they get to their workspaces, they know that they are aware. They are not faced by sexual harassment without knowing exactly what is happening to them. So Imani, if you're still with us, kindly unmute and make your comments.
Thank you, Messi. This has been a very insightful discussion of today. I've got to learn a lot. I think some experience, I thought it's only in Tanzania, but now I've realized that maybe we share the common challenges. I am Imani Henrik from Tanzania, and I am a journalist currently working for Kings FM Radio as a station manager. I think I'm a youngest station manager in Tanzania. So I just wanted to add from someone who shared about the normalization of these actions of gender-based violence and sexual violence when it comes to newsroom. I think the normalization has also been like making us even leaders or managers like stepping back sometimes, because when you see someone has been harassed and you try to react and you find like the victim is like feeling it's just okay, and then you lack even power to keep like standing for them or speaking out for them because they have just seen it's normal. But also, I think another challenge is that sharing of these policies. We just have these policies to showcase maybe to authorities that we have this and that. But we really don't train or orient it to the staff members, so they are not aware. And sometimes others are just passing through these challenges, and yet they don't know if it's not normal, if it's something bad. And yeah, last but not least, I just wanted to stress on the comment from my colleague who shared about men as well. I think it's very important. I'm also a podcaster, and my podcast is focusing on digital rights and online gender-based violence. I normally talk about women online gender-based violence, and especially to women and women journalists. So I did a campaign on January on the Malta on online gender-based violence to men, and of course I received a quite number of testimonies and experience from men, and they are like, we cannot share not only from online but also from newsrooms, from homes and other places, from workplaces. and they are like, we cannot share because, you know, because of the traditions and norms, and people are just like, men are just someone strong, you cannot go and report. And others went further and said, like, if they go to police gender desk and report about the issues that they are passing through, even polices are just against them, like, you are a man and why you are coming to report this? Men are stay strong, they are not, you cannot come and report something about this. These are the women cases. And this has just been like drawing some line when it comes to a police gender desk. Many people think like that those desks are special for only women and children, and men are just, it's not for men. So this has been a very, very, very insightful session, and thank you. I'm grateful to learn from the experience from other countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Imani, for highlighting that. I do not want to add so much. I think you've said it really well, that we need to also empower even those officers who are stationed at those gender desks, because when a man goes to report, I mean, gender-based violence can happen to anyone. Sexual harassment can happen to anyone, regardless of their gender. So it's good to also have these people empowered so that they're able to deal with these cases, equally. So Winnie Kamau, kindly unmute and speak to us.
All right. Thanks, Mercy. I think this has been a very enlightening session, like the previous speaker just talked about it. And I really appreciate, because now I understand from Camera Girls that there's a voice that's coming out, the freelance journalist, the independent journalist. They are the people who, because this sexual harassment has morphed, and it's changing as the situations in the newsrooms are changing. So even as people going to freelance and into being independent, we are facing the same challenges as the newsroom. You find somebody, you want to get your story published, you want to pitch your story, and within that, you'll find somebody asking you for favors. And you're like, is the story what I'm being asked to give? So that is one of the challenges that that I have seen. And as mentioned, my name is Winnie Kamau from the Association of Freelance Journalists. And these are some of the challenges that we're seeing on the ground. And we hope that going forward, that the conversations also will look at the freelancers, we'll look at the independent journalists, we'll look at the correspondents, because when we focus only on the newsroom, then we miss out on the big chunk of journalists who are coming out and who are leaving the newsrooms, but they still want to practice the trade. So that would be my request to JHR and partners. If we can collaborate on this, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Winnie. I believe there are mechanisms that will also put in place to protect journalists who are practicing as freelancers, because they are not isolated. They are not, they are also vulnerable to sexual harassment. Dennis, I'd like to hear from Dennis Otieno, and then we'll hear from Jane Godia.
Good evening, everyone. It's Brenda. I work alongside Dennis from Kenya. I have a problem with my mic, so I'm using the computer. As Kenya, mostly our focus is on women. So in this particular instance, from all that we've been listening to, I think there's one point that I've not been able to find quite clearly, whether in any of this we've been able to have at least even one matter that has been done to full, so that it can serve as a precedent and as a deterrence to some of the media houses who are notorious on this. I understand reports have been made, but unfortunately, we've never had that there's a case that has been taken to court. We've never had that someone who's been arrested. We've never had that the perpetrator has been apprehended, or the matter has ever been concluded. If we could have one matter that is concluded to the full, and media houses, all the participants represented here, or the stakeholders, if we could just have one voice, would at least be able to deter some of the media houses from doing what they're doing. You see, we can educate the girls, we can assist in providing information, but if we don't go the whole way with them, then we have done nothing to support this cause. I think it's time we begin to see proper action being taken with the help of the different stakeholders. Then from there, we can be able to see how best we can support the girls. Thank you.
Thank you. Kindly, I didn't get your name. Computer. Linda.
Brenda.
Brenda. Okay, Brenda. Okay, thank you, Brenda. Yeah, I think I saw Brenda Yambo here. Thank you, Brenda, for that insight. And I think I'd like to request Jane.
Sorry, Mercy, I had an additional point on the same.
Okay, Dennis, fine.
Build up on the point of my colleague. It's going to be very short. Also, additionally, okay.
It's name or dropped.
Oh, you're back. Okay, so additionally, on top of that, having one case, with previous experience here in FIDA, we also discovered that not many people usually want to go fully forward with a sexual harassment case, especially because of the issue of undue influence, and this could be a supervisor, supervisee kind of, a supervisor, supervisee kind of an issue. So sometimes you'll find that these people want to do their cases incognito, and perhaps encouraging one or two to step forward, not necessarily even getting to the court level, but even through various stakeholders and organizations, would just kickstart a way of even creating deterrence for the rest. There's some who will say, yes, indeed, this is what happened, but I don't want to go forward with it. But it would aid in actually creating deterrence mechanisms to prevent it from happening to others who might not know that this exists. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis and Brenda, for bringing your legal mind into this. I think there could not have been a better time to allow Jane to speak, Jane Godia, because she's very vast, she has a very vast knowledge on this topic of sexual harassment. Jane, please unmute yourself and please first start by introducing yourself and the work that you have done. And then I think it's better if you also start from where Brenda has pointed out that she's asked a very critical question. Has there been a matter that has been prosecuted and has set precedents? Because we seem to be talking about perpetrators, but really, where are these notorious perpetrators? Jane, over to you. Janet, kindly mute your mic. Thank you. So Jane, the floor is yours.
Hi, Mercy. Nice to see you again. And thank you so much. And thank you to all who made this possible. My name is Jane Godia. I work for the World Association of News Publishers under the Women in News program. We have done a lot of work around sexual harassment. We have carried 2 researches, one in 2017 and one in 2020-2021. And we note that sexual harassment in media is a big, big problem. What we have come to realize is that very few media houses have sexual harassment policies that would act as guidelines, that would set procedures, that would establish standards in terms of how a case should be handled. Some also have the policies, but they are not enacted. They are more like, they are not living documents. They are dormant. What we do at One IFRA, Women in News, we work in Africa, and in Africa, we work in 10 countries, and we work with about closer to 50 or above media organizations. At One IFRA, we push and believe that any media or any workplace should be zero tolerance to sexual harassment. And that is what we tell our partners. The minute you declare, you know, like when you say the corruption is prohibited in our organization, you must also say sexual harassment is not allowed. And you make everybody know, whether it's your clients, whether it's members of your staff, whether it's the casuals, the interns. When that awareness abounds within your organization, then people see things differently. Before I speak to what Brenda asked, and I will tell her of one case, I just want to say that, one, it's good that we are speaking about sexual harassment, because previously, even during my time in the newsroom, it was the big elephant in the room. It was happening, but nobody was speaking about it. So the fact that we are able to have this conversation is at least something that I can say I'm happy that I can now walk into a newsroom and say, hey, can I train your staff on sexual harassment? I have a living example where one day we trained and somebody realized that what she had been going through is sexual harassment. She went to HR, reported the case. The guy was suspended. When he came back, he could not even be promoted. He just felt he had to leave the organization. Sadly, many of those who are known to have sexually harassed, even when a case is reported and they are found to be guilty, they are usually dismissed. But in the media sector, nothing is written in their letter of dismissal that they were dismissed because of sexual harassment. So you find that somebody jumps from one media organization to the other. Even if the other media house knows that this person is a sexual harasser. In Kenya, we had one case where a lady was being forced, and it was not one person, at gunpoint, to submit to sex with a boss. Those are things that are frightening. They are happening. We need to create awareness. We need to talk about it. We need to let everybody know that they cannot keep quiet. And when I come to answer Brenda's question, I want to talk about the case of Malawi Broadcasting Corporation, where women who are being sexually harassed by the Director General would report to HR, but because he's the Director General of this big organization, nobody was listening. They then moved out and reported to the Malawi Human Rights Commission. And that is the organization that took the Director General to court. He was jailed, he was sacked, the case is ongoing, and the media organization was charged $50,000, which was money that was given to the women. And the women who had resigned because they could no longer stay in the job because of sexual harassment were able to come back to their jobs. So yes, Brenda, there are some countries where even their president has spoken about it, and that is a true living example. The guy is still in court trying to see how the case can be quashed. But what we say at Women in News is that while a perpetrator would think he's enjoying himself, the consequences is that there are financial implications to sexual harassment when you are taken to court. It affects the organization. An organization is supposed to provide a safe work environment for its employees. When you allow sexual harassment to thrive, it means that the safety and security of your employees is threatened. Meaning that if I'm sexually harassed, I even fear, I dread going to work, because the minute I see the person who is sexually harassing me, I want to run away. I no longer feel safe. So sexual harassment is an issue of safety and security, and it is also an issue of abuse of human rights. And that is what we need to talk about as we continue on this advocacy and on this agenda of sexual harassment. So at Women in News, we have trained, we train, we train, we train. We create awareness, we call for change in attitude. that people must be treated with respect, that women who come to work should not be treated as wives, and that men who come to work should be treated with the same respect that they deserve. What we have learned is that sexual harassment, while women are disproportionately affected, men are also affected. The perpetrators could be women. The perpetrators could be men. And we have come across cases where a woman will say she's being sexually harassed by another woman. We have come across cases where men are saying they are being sexually harassed by other men. And these are the realities of life that are there, and we cannot pretend that they are not happening. The issue of not being believed, the issue of not having the right procedures to report, not knowing what to do, the fear of losing jobs has made many not want to report. Some want to live with it, some decide to pack their bags and go, and that is how they leave the newsroom. Most affected are the interns who come and experience sexual harassment right at the start, before they have even graduated. They leave and they never come back to a newsroom. So what are we saying? We are saying that we must continue having this conversation. We must continue speaking to boards of media organizations, boards of directors. There must be political goodwill, and I was discussing this with patients, that if there is no political goodwill from the top, then you are not going to go anywhere. The board must support it. The C-suite, the executives, the senior managers must support that policy. And we go down. That's when it will be a living document. Otherwise, you'll just produce it for ticking boxes. So if Patience or Mercy or JHR come to your organization, say, yeah, we have this, but it's not a living document. So if there's no political goodwill, it is not going to move anywhere. So in these collaborative efforts that we are talking about, and I would like us as Wanifra Women in News to be part of this, let us talk to, from the top management, from the media owners to the boards of directors to the C-suite managers, as we move down to the general staff. Because many times when you're speaking to a CEO or a senior manager, I tell you, but here we've not had any case, because people tend to believe that when nobody is reporting, there's no sexual harassment taking place. But people are not reporting because maybe there are no mechanisms to allow them to report, or maybe they fear not being believed, or maybe the system is that the person you are supposed to report to is the person who is sexually harassing you. So how do you then report? And where we have the small medias, where the owner is the managing director, is the finance manager, is the HR, how do you report to such a person yet you need your job? I've come across cases where women say, when I go home to report, I'm told you have children to feed, can you go back to work? I've come across cases when somebody says you have targets to meet, when clients are forcing you to submit to sex. And when you say no, you go back to a supervisor who tells you, but you know you have targets to meet. And sexual harassment is not restricted to journalists only. Even those in the advertising sector, even those in the marketing sector are also victims, because if they are bringing big business, then you find that a check is tied to them submitting to sexual harassment. This is a topic that could take the whole day, but let us work with who in an organization is responsible for policies. That is the first person we need to know. Then that is how we'll get them either accepting the model policies that we have or asking them to generate their own. Where we have been called to roll out a sexual harassment policy, members of staff have been shocked. Then you find somebody telling you, gosh, I've been doing this, I didn't know. But even where we have relationships, we need to ask people, where do you draw the line in your relationship? Do you just accept shopping being brought to your doorstep? When you are asked to pay for it, what happens? So there is need to create awareness right from students in the university so that they know what they will meet when they get into the job market. To those of us who are there, the conversation Patience was talking about, was to me a clear indication that even the most senior in the media do not know what sexual harassment is. So we need to have this conversation and make people understand that we are not stopping you from having relationships. You can seduce a woman, you can seduce a man, you start a relationship that is consensual, but where you are using your power as a supervisor to force people to submit to sex, then that is sexual harassment. Where you are intimidating, where you are making people feel they are threatened, there is fear around and somebody will not say no to you because you are a boss. And that is what sexual harassment is all about. It's about power. It's not about sex. And that is the conversation that we need to have. Saying as I close, Mercy, because you know I can talk about this for an hour, that as One Ifra Women in News, we would really like to be part of this regional collaboration, this network that you want to build. We work in the East Africa region, we work in Kenya, Uganda, we work in Somalia, South Sudan, we are in Rwanda, we are in Malawi, we are in Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Botswana. And we are also in the Arab region, and we are also in the Southeast Asia region. And we have some things we are doing in Russia and in the Ukraine. There's a lot of work going on in Europe and in the Northern America region. But our key advocacy area is sexual harassment. And within this, we also bring in the issue of gender equality, diversity, and inclusivity, because you find that those who are gender what is the word, gender? Binary or non-conforming are also facing, they are also facing sexual harassment within the spaces that they work, and maybe they are not being accepted for who they are. Those are some of the challenges that are there. And we've said there are men who are sexually harassing other men, there are women who are sexually harassing other women. Those are challenges that are in the media, yet for us, we don't want to believe that they could be happening amongst those of us who are in the sector. Efforts are needed. The conversations are there. If I went into a newsroom now as Jen Godia, the first thing they'll tell, Jen, we've not developed a sexual harassment policy. They start, then they, we are not balanced. We are still not good in terms of gender. And another thing that we are doing is the leadership mapping, just to know how many women are in leadership, what is the percentage, because lack of women in the decision-making table in most media organizations is also affecting some of the things that we are talking about. Thank you very much, Mercy.
Well, thank you very much, Jane. But before I let you go, I think there's a question in the chat box. Just allow me to read it out for you. So during the presentation earlier on, it was pointed out that the cases of GBV and sexual harassment in the newsrooms is rampant in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. So what is the situation like in Kigali, that is in Rwanda? And does it mean that the Rwandese are not ahead of the East African states? If so, can we scrutinize what has worked for them? Are there lessons to emulate and adopt? Does the legal and justice system in countries where they've achieved in reducing the vice stronger and acted as deterrent? So I think this question is aimed at, just analyzing the Rwanda situation and seeing whether there are lessons that we can draw from Rwanda if the situation there is better compared to Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania.
Mercy, I don't think that it is better, because I've sat in a room full of women weeping in Rwanda. The problem is who agrees to say, yes, I've been, because when you're collecting data and you're asking, have you been sexually harassed? If somebody doesn't want to say, yes, I have been, yet she has been harassed, then you are missing out on that information. The situation in Rwanda is just the same as the situation in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe. The challenge is that Kenya is a big market compared to Rwanda. So when you collect numbers in Kenya, then you are collecting more numbers. And this will then show that the numbers in Kenya are high. Tanzania is also a big media market, particularly with the radio sector. And I've had harrowing stories from Tanzania. I've had harrowing stories from South Sudan. I think I had a story in South Sudan of a woman being raped as she's presenting in the studio. and everybody was wondering why things went quiet. So sexual assault in the compass of sexual harassment is there. Women have complained of being raped. Men have complained of being sexually assaulted. So I don't think there's any country that is better, that has managed to bring their numbers down. And you can see from the research that we did in 2020, 1 in every 2 women. So whether you are in Rwanda, whether you are in Kenya, it means if you are 2, 1 of us has experienced sexual harassment. So it is the same, only that some markets are small. Like if you are in a country like Botswana with only 2 million people, the numbers will not be the same as the numbers of Kenya, where we are almost 50 million people. So there's that difference. I don't think Rwanda's numbers are small. They are equally experiencing, but I think when we are now moving forward, when we speak about gathering data on drivers and wanting to know cases of sexual harassment, then we need to work with a lot of partners so that we collect this information and ask women to speak. The biggest challenge is silence. Let us ask our men and women not to keep quiet. Let us lift that veil of silence and get people to report, because it lives with somebody for the rest of their lives. Even in yesterday's meeting, when men were recounting what they have experienced, and it's more than 10 years later, it means that it's something they are living with and they are not forgetting it. So let's have these conversations and let's encourage reporting. And where our newsrooms are not helping, I'm proud to see organizations like FIDA, organizations like CRU, coming in, and if you took a case to them, they would even give you pro bono lawyers and your case will be heard. And with that, I think those who have tried to normalize, and we must remove the word normalizing. You can't normalize human rights abuse in a country where people are civilized. You can't say it's okay. You turn me into a wife or a sex object for as long as you want. We must stop that conversation. Let's speak to our girls, let's speak to our women, because when somebody is crying and you think it is okay, and like somebody here, Rose is the one who said that when I ask men if their daughters will join journalism, they all say no. They tell you, no, I don't want my daughter to come to the newsroom, yet the daughter is proud of what the father is doing and she wants to follow him. The father is her best role model, and the father is blocking her from doing what she would want to do because of what he sees in the newsroom. Let us continue having these conversations. Let us continue collaborating, and I'm sure one day these numbers will go down to 0. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane, so much. And I couldn't agree with you more that this issue of sexual harassment is more of a safety and security issue. And, these are the conversations that we should have so that we make this space safe for ourselves and for our daughters, because I think we all agree that we are not leaving this space, because honestly, who are we going to leave it for? If we don't get to hear the voices of women in this space, then the story will only be half told. So I just want to read one comment on the chat, and then I'll close this session, but I'll not close until I ask Mustafa to make the closing remarks. So Mustafa, please be on standby, because I see no more hands up. So I think the participants are contented with this very enriching conversation that we've had today. Patricia, you have written this, Patricia Ibasi from South Sudan, that you said that female journalists need to be empowered to take up top positions in the media sector, because most of the media sectors are headed by males, and female journalists find it hard to report in case of sexual harassment incidences at their workplace. So, and I see, Amina, you have said you could not agree more that you need to have more women to support female leadership in the sector. Thank you very much to everyone who has made this webinar, possible. Thank you to my panelists, Amina Mohammed from Uganda, and we have Patience Nyange from Kenya, and Patricia Ibasi from South Sudan, as well as the other participants from Tamwa and Umwa. And again, I also want to thank you, Journalists for Human Rights Kenya, for making this possible, and in collaboration with Cameras for Girls, and all the individuals who have represented their countries in any capacity for this webinar. We look forward to interacting with you moving forward, because I believe this is just the beginning of collaboration regionally, and also extending this collaboration in the continent. So thank you very much for being engaging, and I believe that you have learned a lot. This is not an isolated issue. It cuts across the borders, and I believe this is just but the beginning of getting a solution to this, vice. I'd like to call upon Mustafa to make the closing remarks, and thank you very much. I have been your moderator, Mercy Njoroge from JHR. Asanteni sana. Mustafa, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mercy, for moderating such an enlightening session. Trying to put the video on. Bernard, you may have to help enable my video. But thank you so much, Mercy. This has been quite interactive, it's been informative as well, but most importantly, enlightening. Just to hear from everyone from South Sudan, from Tanzania, from Uganda. We really thank you all for making the time to join us today, and also share with us the prevalence of sexual harassment in your different contexts, but most importantly as well, the work that you're already doing to tackle this. One thing that I believe one thing we've all agreed here now is that it's important for us to work together. We cannot solve this in isolation. We cannot work in silos. There is strength and there is power in us working together to make sure that the lessons that have been learned in Kenya are replicated in South Sudan, are replicated in Uganda, and across the region. And hopefully, we'll be able to take this work outside of the region as well. Journalists for Human Rights, as the name implies, we take this work seriously. We take the work of addressing sexual harassment and all forms of gender-based violence in the media industry and in society generally very, very important. Just to recap in some of the key outcomes that I have had following the different conversations here today, there has been a lot of conversation around accountability. FIDA came out and actually, emphasized the point around accountability. I will not go back, but these are issues that we will consider going forward as we continue to engage on this issue. Gender equality generally, because some of sexual harassment and in itself, is an outcome of having an equal space, a space where some people are more powerful than the others, and there are no accountability measures. And also fair pay, which is a very important point we don't talk much about. But all of these inequalities actually lead to the high prevalence of sexual harassment in the industry. And our Journalists for Human Rights, in collaboration with all the partners we work with, Camera for Girls, Jane, we've started this work together, and we're looking forward to continue working with Wanifa and Kenan and Amweek and the rest of the other partners that we are working with to do this work together. We cannot do this in isolation, and we're looking forward to continue this collaboration. I heard there is already an ongoing survey going on in Tanzania, in Tanzania and in the newsrooms to know more about the prevalence and to get data. And this is something that we welcome, and this is something that we look forward to engaging further on. As we speak, there is one that is already ongoing in Kenya as well, being conducted by Amweek, our partners. So we look forward to getting more data, because to advocate, to make a case, data is really crucial. And this is work that we hope to take on in South Sudan, in Somalia, in Rwanda, in all these places, to just make sure that we get, yes. Yeah. Yeah, I'll give you quick when I'm done. Yeah, so we just make sure that we get more data in order for us to be able to fight from a place of no with concrete data in our fingertips. So thank you very much. We will be in touch in terms of the next steps of where this is going. As Amina mentioned earlier, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning to get an idea, to understand the context, but we will convene again very soon, and the date will be announced. We'll convene again very soon in terms of what the next steps will be. Amina is here, and Amina, just before Mercy wrap this up, you may have a word or two to say before we wrap this up, but I think I look at the time. Yeah, Amina, you're welcome. If you have a word to say before we wrap it up.
Very briefly, I just wanted to thank everyone for attending today, and for bringing your thoughts and your suggestions on how we move forward, but also being open to share the real challenges that this sector faces in dealing with this. It takes everybody, not just the associations, not just us at Cameras for Girls or the team at JHR. It takes everybody to come together and really make change. So looking forward to keeping this discussion going and coming up with a framework for real change. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amina. And I guess we've come to the close. Mercy, back to you as the host. But again, from the bottom of my heart, it's been very educative. It's been very, very informative. Thank you all, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Mustafa and Amina. Have a great evening, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a great session.
My apologies for those who raised their hands and they were not seen. I'm just seeing those chats now.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay.
Kenyan media has been ranked as leading in cases of sexual harassment in Africa, with 1 in every 2 women in the media said to have faced physical and verbal abuse at the place of work. According to a survey by Women in News, Kenya was ranked leading in cases of sexual harassment at 56%. Some of the counties flagged for high prevalence of sexual harassment include Nairobi, Kiambu, Mombasa, Homa Bay, Siaya, Migori, Uasin Gishu, Kisumu, Kajiado, and Meru. Incidentally, the vice that was assumed to be rampant mainly in the informal sector is also thriving in the public sector, and especially the media.
There was this camera person who was seemed nice because you are an intern, you're there trying to really your best forward to show that you can deliver. So one day he called me behind some, our office was kind of not, our office was not that big. So he called me mahali nyuma, like behind somewhere that nobody could see us. So he just grabbed my hand. I was seated working on some show. Then he grabbed my hand and told me, "There's not something I need to tell you right now, like right now." I thought it was something so urgent. And this is someone who's like my boss, but he's now in a senior position. So of course I rushed out. I went to that place.